brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Podcast. I'm Allie Heiss on coming to you live from Pensacola, Florida. Joined with me, as always, out in beautiful and humid Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, what's going on?
Allie, for the first time in my life, yesterday I saw in the news that they closed schools for heat indexes. That is something I've never been used to out in Idaho. It could be 108 outside, but they wouldn't close a school because it was dry humidity or no humidity and dry. But it was interesting to see that they would actually close schools because of the heat index out here. But by the way, being from a guy from Idaho that had zero humidity, maybe 10% on a good day, I'm feeling it, like learning to wear darker shirts now outside because I don't want to look like a sweaty. But yeah, it's a thing. It's Ohio. It's sweat.
It is a thing.
Ohio has nothing on southern states or South Carolina, some of the places you know.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I thought that North and South Carolina would have nothing. You know, I'd be used to the humidity. Come down to Florida, no. It doesn't even touch the humidity down here. It's a different world. It is a different world here in Florida.
Especially Pensacola up there in the upper Gulf. I mean, that is like soupy, as I call it right there, probably.
It is. It's a damn swamp out there all the time. But nonetheless, everybody, a lot of fun on the show for you tonight. We've got Dr. David Ellery coming on here in just a few moments. Of course, we are going to welcome Stump Mitchell on later on in the program. That's going to be a really good one. Post 53-man cut, right? We are there. We've got some tangible Browns news to go over. We're going to get into it. Obviously, David's going to go over all of the injuries, kind of talk about that. Go over the injury report. There's some interesting things that came out of the cut down. Let's kick it off first and foremost before we get into it with a quick word from our friends over at Teresa's Pizza.
It's hometown pizza, Teresa's Pizza, with 2 locations located in University Heights and Mayfield Heights. Teresa's Pizza has everything you need during the big game, Saturday or Sunday. Specials include 2 large 2-topping pizzas for $25.99. Saturday's game day special is a large 2-topping pizza with 12 wings for $29.99. Sunday's game day special is an XL 2-topping pizza and 24 wings for $49.99. Use code BARK. All caps for a discount off all online orders in University Heights and Mayfield Heights. Cleveland's hometown pizza, Teresa's Pizza.
Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm playing it twice. Just so excited about Teresa's Pizza. I got to play it twice. All right, let's get into it. Browns, well, every team made their cuts. All teams are now down to the initial 53-man roster, as Kevin Stefanski kind of reminds us every preseason that it's the initial 53-man roster, not the final 53-man roster. So with that perspective in mind, what was the biggest shock to you, Dustin?
Shocked, but not shocked. And I'll tell you why. 4 quarterbacks on the active roster. That's the one that I think is making a lot of the news. But I know what Andrew Berry's doing. Injuries happen. Football teams need quarterbacks. We had to have 5 last year. So over the course of the season. So to me, that was the biggest surprise. Friend of the program, Trayton Welch, from what I can tell, has not made the practice squad or, the 53-man roster from everything I'm seeing. Again, it's always fluid. We know that. But I'm also surprised we only have 2 tight ends on a team that typically is 40% tight end heavy, roughly sometimes upwards, which makes me think there could be some new wrinkles in the offense this year. So those are the 2 things I think that stood out the most for me. And some of the running backs being, released and not keeping some of those on because of where we had where we have Chubb on the PUP list. Those are kind of the 3 glaring things that stick out to me. What about you, Alex?
It's the same, right? One, having 4 quarterbacks, pretty unheard of, right? I know that we were talking about it all off season saying, the Browns probably will do it. I still think that there's a world where, come week 1, there's not 4 quarterbacks on the roster. And I think that's very telling of where the Browns are with Deshaun Watson, or maybe they're worries with Deshaun Watson and wanting to carry, a plethora of quarterbacks. So that's a conversation we'll get into here later. But you mentioned it, tight end, only carrying two of them with David Njoku and Jordan Akins, and then running backs. Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong are the only two running backs on the roster. Now, we know that we're going to get Nick Chubb back, hopefully, after 4 weeks, as he is on the PUP list. We don't know what kind of Nick Chubb we're going to get back. I think everybody's optimistic. We're hopeful. We kind of have an idea with the type of player and person that he is. He's going to come back bigger, better, faster, stronger, but we don't know. I think the biggest shock to me was the 4 quarterback situation and also terminating the contract of Deontay Foreman. I think it's very possible and probable, actually, that he will be back with the team at some point. But I was just surprised to see that at the time that they terminated his contract.
Yeah. Again, this is a fluid situation, and you bring up a good point. 4 quarterbacks is a lot to have on a team. But it's interesting that, I brought this up, I think, on last week's show, I believe, where all these rumors where it's DTR was being shopped. And I was like, I don't think it's DTR. I think it's Huntley and Winston. And people thought I was crazy. But now we're seeing a lot of that kind of come to the forefront because there are teams that are going to need quarterbacks. And I think DTR and a rookie-friendly deal makes a lot more sense than – and here's the truth. Yeah, I mean, Winston's going to have a larger contract, but he's also a very experienced quarterback in the NFL. And if a team wants a guy, say, goes down to injury and they want somebody that can go in and start, Winston's probably going to be that guy that can go in there and do that and be ready. And the Browns won't have to pay the money anymore. So there's kind of a yin and a yang to that situation, because I saw, and I don't know, Allie, how you feel about this after watching Saturday night's game in Seattle. DTR has grown up a lot in the last few months as a Browns quarterback. And, man, he has some just beautiful throws to thrash in that second half that just was like, okay, this kid's – the light bulbs went off.
He's got it. Yeah.
He's got it. Exactly. He was not the guy that I sat and watched in Baltimore against the Ravens, in Cleveland last year. He's not
even that, even that was, he was just in a terrible, terrible situation, right? Like that was not the plan. I think DTR, there's a conversation, and maybe it's a little bit premature, where Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the QB2 on this roster.
Right.
I don't think that they are shopping him. I think maybe last week I would have been saying, yeah, maybe. But after that performance, no, he's QB2 in my opinion. Now I'm sure the contract will state otherwise, right? You bring in Jameis, you really anticipate him to be that guy. And I like Jameis a lot, but I think if they're going to be shopping anybody, it's Jameis Winston. One, because I don't think you get a ton of value for Tyler Huntley. Teams are just going to sit around and wait for you to cut him because they're also saying the same thing, keeping 4 quarterbacks. That's crazy. We're just going to sit and wait for you to cut somebody because you're going to have to eventually. And the odd man out is Tyler Huntley. So if they are going to make a trade at quarterback, if they do, big if there, if they do make a trade, in my opinion, it's Jameis Winston. Because I think DTR is on this roster for a while.
Well, and I also think this. We have some unique situations with the Browns 53-man roster and some of our players, and I'll get into that a little bit. The fact that Nick Chubb is on the PUP list, right, doesn't count against your 53-man roster. We know he's coming in.
Right.
That allows you to keep a 4th quarterback, right? That allows you to make that decision. Mike Hall's on the commissioner's exempt list right now. Again, that doesn't count against your 53-man roster, right? So you almost have 2 extra spots, right, that are placeholders for if and when you need to move a quarterback out or bring somebody in or off the defense. So the Browns are kind of in an interesting situation, fortunately or unfortunately, one being a player that you hope will have a future with the Browns with Mike Hall, and clearly Nick Chubb has a future with the Cleveland Browns. That's an obvious. So those are 2 things that are outliers that kind of have a lot to do with why the 53-man roster looks like it does today.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's bring David on to talk about some injuries. Before we do so, a quick word from our friends over at Lorello Vineyards.
Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Woof, woof.
Hello, welcome to Lorello Vineyards, Larry and Kim Lorello. We have a beautiful Here We Go Brownies wine that we would like to offer to you this season as we did last season. We have several other award-winning wines, lovely entertainment and events coming this summer. So come and see us, whine a bit, you'll feel better.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you at the Muni lot this fall. Go Browns.
All right, let's bring him on. Dr. David Ellery to the program. I can hear the cicadas, David. I can hear the cicadas. Those things are screaming. That's another thing, Dustin. I knew that there were some cicadas here in Florida. They are so loud. I mean, you can hear them.
Is that the cicadas outside?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe I should go inside. Is it pretty bad?
That's fine. That's fine.
I can hear them.
Okay.
It's not terrible, but
Okay. Hi guys.
yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
David, good to see you. David, are you having some whiskey tonight while you're sitting out there on the patio?
Not tonight. I am having a beer,
Okay.
but
All right.
you guys alluded to or talked about the humidity, and I am feeling it. I'm sweating right now. So between the cicadas and the humidity, I might need to go inside.
And the beer. Let's kick it off. Browns make the initial 53-man roster. We were just talking about the shock, really, with terminating the contract of Deontay Foreman because you only carry 2 running backs on the roster right now, David. Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong. You get rid of Deontay Foreman. Now, likely that he comes back, but you've got Nick Chubb and Nyheim Hines that are not available for several weeks, and they don't count against this 53-man roster. One, I guess my question is, in doing so, do you think that, one, I know this isn't really an injury-related question, but, they're making room for another running back, maybe a trade or somebody like that to come on in, or two, that they are very optimistic that after the first 4 weeks, because you can look at the schedule, the biggest, toughest opponent is the Cowboys, after 4 weeks that Nick Chubb's going to come in and be himself.
Yeah, no, I think there's some interesting moves here and some things that I learned actually researching this. I do anticipate that, they're being strategic in terms of how they're going to bring some players back. And they did this last year too. But so to kind of go over at least what you guys already talked about, the injury things, placed on reserve in non-football illness was guard Michael Dunn, who was designated for return. Placed on reserve non-football injury was Nyheim Hines, and placed on the reserve pup list was Nick Chubb. So as you alluded to, 2 of the running backs were placed on before the cut day came, and so they did not count against the 53-man roster, but it also means they cannot play in the first 4 weeks. And so an interesting twist here is Luke Whippler. So, when it was coming up to the cut day, there was like, hey, is Luke going to be placed on IR? What's the deal here? But they already had those 2 spots reserved for the running backs. And so Luke, obviously made the team and then was placed on IR afterwards. And so the issue with that is shuffling these people around. You end up having to waive or terminate or release somebody, and then maybe play the game to either get them back or go for someone else. And so, article from Corey Kinnan on Browns Wire, he talked about just this, and that how the Browns or in the NFL, you're allowed to have 2 players on the pup or injured reserve or non-football list without it being placed on the 53-man roster. So that is a new rule change this offseason where it's 2 players. But again, Whippler had to go onto the IR after the cuts happened. And so last year, in a situation like this, they cut Maurice Hurst and Michael Dunn, but they had already had prior agreements with both of those players to bring them back as soon as the player on the 53-man roster was moved to IR. And so similarly, I think that was the plan probably this year. Once they made the cuts and made the final roster, Luke Whippler will be moved to IR, and then they're going to bring back somebody. And so my guess is one of those people that they're looking at bringing back could be Deontay Foreman. Typically you have to have a good rapport with these players. These players have to kind of have a gentleman's agreement with the team. One of the caveats is this type of movement is only available with veterans who have logged 4 or more years of service time.
Right.
And so Deontay is one of those guys. I mean, he's been in the league for longer than that. And so I think that's probably the strategy that they're taking here. And I guess we'll see tomorrow or the next couple of days, hopefully, if that's the case. But yeah, it's definitely some gamesmanship and some strategy you have to employ, but I think it's pretty crafty and pretty creative and kind of exciting to see the way that they can manipulate the roster to maintain the players they want and also create the depth like a quarterback, like you talked about.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I was going to say, question for you, David. When you look at the quarterback situation, obviously we know Nick Chubb is not coming back till a minimum of week 5. I don't think it's more of an injury thing or a concern of this lingering thing that may be going on with Deshaun Watson with, arm soreness or whatever, stuff like that. I mean, I know he's taking a ton of reps And like you said, everybody has to come back from injury, and their body has to get used to that many reps and that kind of stuff. And he wouldn't be doing this in a normal week, throwing that many reps week after week, like he was in training camp. I don't, and to my question to you, David, is do you think there is a lingering thing going on with Deshaun first and foremost, or do you feel like it really is Andrew Berry just playing chess while others are playing checkers and knowing that somebody's going to get injured, somebody's going to be needing a quarterback, and once again, we'll pull off a move where we get another draft capital, more draft assets, kind of like we did with Cade York, where we picked him up and then we ended up getting a draft pick after him.
Yeah, I mean, from everything I've understood or learned or read, it just seems like I don't know if there's necessarily a lingering issue with Deshaun, but we don't really get a lot of information about that. Certainly, week and a half from now, if there's when the injury report comes out, if there's something there, we'll definitely learn more information. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, like I said, I think he was just kept out of that last game just because of some soreness and just out of precaution. It doesn't sound like they're really that concerned about it. It's more or less just making sure he's fully ready to go and not putting him through more than he needs to. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we know the reps are important. We recognize that getting that experience and some game time after being out for so long is going to have an impact on him, but he also needs to be healthy. So I don't think there's a lingering issue. But again, I could be wrong. That's just some speculation because we don't have all the information.
It came out that Jack Conklin, it wasn't just an ACL. He had almost as gruesome of an injury, maybe not to the naked eye, as Nick Chubb earlier in the season, or the week 1 last year. ACL, MCL, pretty much everything in his knee had to be fixed, essentially, David. So he's back. He has battled injury year after year, and just unfortunate stuff, like things you just like, man, that really sucks for that guy. Not that I wouldn't consider him injury prone, because some of these are just like freak things that are happening to him as an offensive lineman. But I just want to talk about that as a veteran player who's up there in age, who's been a very good producing tackle, coming back from a very significant knee injury. What is the likelihood that he returns to Jack Conklin?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. So we just saw that the other day. He revealed that it was, like you said, ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus. I mean, 4 major structures torn, needing repair or reconstruction. So, I mean, akin to, at least in terms of the amount of damage or amount of structural damage to Nick Chubb, or even worse, because we know Chubb's was ACL, MCL. You got in the PCL for Jack Conklin. So, in theory or totality of the injury, really, he had more happen to himself and more damage. So it was almost like a worse injury in that sense. So I'm not surprised at all that he's not back, not ready to go. Like we talk about all the time, a year to return. It takes a year for these guys to get back to it. And yeah, I mean, he's 30 years old. He's been in the league for a while. He is a veteran, so he knows how to recover and how to play through these things. But it's definitely going to have an impact on him and maybe his drive to get off with that foot, being able to plant or move laterally. Again, these guys are all superheroes in the way they heal and recover and rehab. And so I still think that we can see him back and playing. And you just have to hope that he doesn't take a step back because of it. But at 30 in the NFL with a multi-ligament knee injury, 3 ligaments, that's going to be very challenging to recover from and take a lot of work on his end.
And then on top of that, there's some speculation that he is now the swing tackle. He was going to be the swing tackle if Jed could come back. Still some uncertainty there. So they say put DeJuan at right tackle, move Jack to left, and not only coming off of a very significant injury, but then just totally switching positions as a 30-year-old vet in the league. Like that's tough.
Yeah. There's a lot of complexity to it and a lot of moving parts. Just considering all of those things, because now you have to learn a different position or a new position. And I know that we talk about they can switch back and forth with some relative ease, but I mean, you're right. I mean, you've been doing one position for 12, 15 years, and switching to the other side, it is different. So you're going to have to learn some things while also still rehabbing your knee. And it's going to be a big task, and it's a big undertaking. But I mean, we've seen these guys succeed and perform before, and you just have to hope that their training and their kind of their regimen kicks in to enable them to continue to perform and have great protection for both Deshaun and the running backs.
Yeah, that brings up a good question because I looked at the depth chart and you had, Conklin number 1 and DeJuan Jones number 2. That kind of surprised me, with him coming back. I kind of felt that they kind of thrust him into that, hey, you're going to be the starter. I don't know. I was a little surprised by that, Allie and David. That they put him there and just because DeJuan played so well last year and he came, so natural into that role and was good at it. It's almost like, for me, you don't want that guy to regress either, right? If he's not going to get playing time, and you want to keep him going and becoming a better player. So I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, you're looking at an all-pro tackle in Jack Conklin, and to say, you're not going to get the nod if you're ready to go, that's tough. And I think that's where this becomes a pretty complex situation.
Right.
Obviously, for every offensive mind in this organization to figure out what you do, because you've got some uncertainty with Jed Wills coming off of an injury. Don't really know when you're going to get him back. And prior to the injury, he wasn't playing well, period, point blank. But then you have a rookie or a second-year player now in DeJuan Jones who played great when he was able, and then former All-Pro Jack Conklin, who coming off of a nasty knee injury. So yeah, there's some weird stuff that has to go on here. I do think we'll see some movement. I don't know. I can't even speculate what that's going to look like. I think if I had to guess who your 2 tackles are going to be week 1, it's Jack Conklin and DeJuan Jones. I just don't know which end and who's doing it. That's my guess. David, what are we missing? Any other injuries, anything like that's come out that we need to discuss?
Nothing else otherwise that I've seen or heard, or if it did, I would have missed it. But no, I think those are the big things. I mean, I brought up Whippler earlier, but the fact that he had this ankle fracture and now has been put on the IR for this means he's probably out for this season. And so just kind of going towards what you're just talking about, depth on the offensive line is a problem, and you need to rely on your veterans and your starters who have been there and done that. And so if for any reason, or not for any reason, but as long as Jack's good to go, as long as these guys who have some time are good to go, they're going to play him. Even if it is moving it over to the other side, because they need to find their best 5 and the best opportunity to succeed. And when you start losing depth on that line, you really have to lean on those guys who have the experience and that who have been there and done that.
Man,
so
that is tough.
Yeah, a couple things too. I was going to add to that. Obviously with DeAnthony Bell, Greg Newsome, being activated, it's good to get some of those guys back. I don't know if they'll be ready for week 1, but looks like there's a possibility they definitely will be. And then just to take you off sidetrack here a little bit, David, I don't know if you obviously college football is this Saturday. Ohio State will be playing, Notre Dame will be playing, but I don't know if you got a chance to look at the college football playoffs and where they matched up the college football playoffs. It was kind of ironic. Number 5, they had Notre Dame at taking on Boise State in the college football playoffs for the 12-game seed. I don't know if Kirk and all those guys had Boise State. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out and see that they had a 5 versus a 12, which I learned. I didn't know this about college football playoffs. Boise State would actually have to go to Notre Dame because Notre Dame would host that playoff game in this new format. So it's kind of very, very interesting to see that.
That's right. It's very exciting. The top 4 seeds get a bye, and then the next 4 have a home playoff game. And I think it's awesome because we're going to see some outdoor college football in the North. And I'm ready for the SEC to have a travel to South Bend and Columbus and all those places up north to have to deal with the elements. And so that would be an interesting matchup. I don't know how that game would turn out, but it would definitely be an interesting one. There's going to be some issues with Notre Dame's offensive line.
Yeah, as I said, 2 teams are used to playing outdoors, right? So they're used to the elements for sure. But obviously, Ohio State, Allie, you got to be getting excited about that. Week 1. I mean, they're taking on Akron. Is it Akron they're playing this week 1? I mean, I feel bad for. By the way, there's a lot of Akron grads around here. A lot of them that work in my building, so they're kind of like, got to take on Ohio State this weekend. We're just, they're kind of already expecting the inevitable, but.
No, we're excited. I mean, we live, eat, and breathe Buckeye football in this house, and we're all the way pumped up. It is it's go time. But also, it's tough because this weekend is actually my bachelorette party.
Oh my
So
goodness. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's
All right. All right.
I'm hosting it. We're hosting. The girls are coming down, so really excited about that. But I
That'll
don't
be
know how
fun.
much actual football we'll be able to watch. But that's okay. It's week one. You know, you've got
It's
some
Akron.
matchups like that.
It's Akron.
It's Akron. I can live with it as long as it's on in the background. I'll survive. It's okay. It's okay. But there's some
Well,
other good matchups. I'm excited.
yeah. So, interesting story. Obviously, Boise State goes to play Georgia Southern down in Georgia. And then week 2, we're on the road at Oregon. That is going to be a tough game. And then our good friend of the program, Eric Metcalf, he's going to go watch the Texas play Michigan, I believe, in week 2, and then come to the Browns game here. So you're right. There are some good big matchups early in this season that'll decide the playoffs for some of these teams, you know, as you get later in the season.
Jason gets it. Scheduling the bachelorette party before the football season, NFL season. Everything is strategic. All strategy over here. David, thanks for joining. We appreciate it. As always, go Browns.
Thanks, guys. Go Browns.
All right, that is Dr. David Ullery. Really, I think it's really unique to talk about what's going to happen on the offensive line because it wasn't reported for a while up until very recently. The whole Jack Conklin injury,
Right.
that was tough. That was a really significant injury. So I am very curious, Dustin, what's going to happen. But we'll get Stump's perspective here in just a few moments. Before we turn it over to him, Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about City Barbecue?
Guys, if you haven't had City Barbecue, get in, try it out. They have the party packs for your football weekends or your weekend for your family. 7 Northeast Ohio locations, guys. That's right, 7 Northeast Ohio locations all over the greater Cleveland area. Get into City Barbecue, try their barbecue out. It's amazing. They have great sauces, by the way, too. You can go in and get some of their sauces. I have some of those myself. Great barbecue sauces, rubs, all the different kind of things you want to get. And look for on our page for giveaways from City Barbecue for some gift cards for you and your family or friends to go out and enjoy City Barbecue here in greater Northeast Ohio. And by the way, not just here, they're down in Columbus, Ohio. That's where they started. So if you're in Ohio and you're watching us from somewhere else, go into your local City Barbecue.
There you go. There you have it. Also, I want to tell you about our friends over at Hartville Marketplace and Flea Market. Guys, if you haven't headed down to Hartville yet, you're really missing out. They've got everything there. They've got the indoor flea market. It's over 3 acres of indoor shopping with over 50 unique shops. By the way, it is fully heated and air conditioned. So you can go get some antiques, some treasures, some produce, meat, cheese, coffee, whatever you need, they've got it. But then head outside, they have over 12 acres of outdoor space. I mean, that's insane. Over 1,000 vendors. They are open Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays year round. Something for all ages. So please be sure to go check them out over in Hartville. So before we bring on Stump Mitchell,
Allie,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to tell you tomorrow, guys, if you are in the Cleveland area and you're looking for some fun stuff, and by the way, they won today against those Kansas City Royals. We needed that win. But a lot of the, including Ramirez, some of the players will be down in Hartville tomorrow evening for autographs. So if you want to meet some of your favorite Guardians, go down there with Primetime Sports and get some awesome autographs from some great Guardians, guys. Some meet and greets and some autographs tomorrow night in Hartville at Primetime.
There you go. There you have it. All right. This interview with Stump Mitchell is brought to you by our friends over at Stadium Mustard. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste. It's beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard, rich in both taste and tradition. And by the way, it's loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. Let's bring him on. Stump Mitchell. Stump, how's it going?
Great. How are you all?
Living the dream. Really excited. Football is in the air. Got some tangible news. The entire NFL had to have their roster cuts by yesterday. So a lot of news circulating right now. And I can feel the energy, the football energy. I'm getting really excited.
Absolutely. You know, it's everybody feels at this particular point in time, they have a chance. If the ball goes the right way, everybody's got a chance.
So the Browns did it. They had to make their initial 53-man roster. Now, I know initial and final are two totally different things, and a lot can happen between now and week one. But just to kind of kick it off and start talking about these roster cuts, were there any big surprises to you as it pertains to the Cleveland Browns?
No, not really. It's probably the second year or third year in a row. Unfortunately, the number 3 draft pick hadn't been able to stay around for whatever reason. Schwartz and now your big tackle there, Siak. But those are things that you learn from. I don't think it'll happen again. Andrew, I'm sure, is probably listening to the scouts or the coaches a little better now than he has in the past. He's done a hell of a job. He's had some great players in there, but some of them just didn't suit what we needed as coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stump, obviously we talked about this a little bit before you came on. The fact that the Browns, only have 2 running backs, on the 53-man roster. Obviously, we know Nick Chubb's going to start the season on the PUP list. Being a running backs coach, does that surprise you? I know we have some designation with some of the injuries that you can do with that, with the manipulation of the roster. But are you surprised at this point, going into week one, where the roster is, that there's only 2 running backs on the active roster?
No, I'm not really surprised because Deuce is a hell of a coach, and I'm sure he and Andrew have worked together before. So I know there's some input there, and they probably feel pretty good about some of the guys that they put on the practice squad and thinking that they can get them back. So I think they'll be okay there.
We got a couple of questions here for you, Stump. Just as we're talking about the running back position, our friend Danielle says, with Chubb being out for the first 4 games, how do we feel about Jerome Ford? Obviously, Jerome was a player, that you got to work with. I just want to talk a little bit about that. Him going into this season, especially now with Deontay Foreman out, him and Pierre Strong being the only guys on this roster right here, right now. How confident are you in their ability to get the job done?
I feel great about Jerome. Jerome did a heck of a job last year. He came 100 and some yards short of gaining 1,000 yards. When you was splitting time with 2 other backs, I think that's pretty dang on good. Great receiver, and also a great pass blocker. Jerome did a great job. So his production is not going to be based on his skill set. He has the skill set to be one of the best backs in the league. Unfortunately, they're experiencing some problems with the offensive line right now. And that's going to, if he gets a chance to get started, he's going to make some things happen. He's a very elusive guy. He can make people miss. He has all the skill set to be a top back in the league. So if he gets an opportunity to get started, he'll make some stuff happen.
Cool.
So questions, Stump, along those lines, obviously with Nick Chubb coming back, maybe week 5, week 6, we don't know. We obviously just know it won't be the first 4. Do you see that being a pretty, or can be, like you said, be a very potential dangerous 1-2 punch for the Browns, having Ford and Chubb, week 5, when when you get into the division play and stuff like that, but that could be a pretty lethal weapon for the Browns with Ford and Chubb, that 1-2 punch going with that offense.
Allie, Dustin, the bottom line is it doesn't matter about those skill guys. If that offensive line is not up to par, nobody's going to have a great season, unfortunately. Yeah. That's just the way it is. The skill guys, the skill set guys, I don't care where they at, they depend on the offensive linemen. Guys got to have time to get the ball off if we're passing the ball, and they got to have an opportunity to find a running lane if you're running the ball. Those guys, it's no surprise why they make so much money now as opposed to when things were in the past.
Right.
So let's talk about that. We've got a great, the Browns offensive line for years has been great, especially under Bill Callahan. But I'm still very optimistic about this season. Great interior of the offensive line. I think the question right now is about the tackle position based off of injuries and also depth. So I have heard, some speculation that maybe you can move Jack Conklin to the left side, or maybe you move DeJuan. What are your thoughts on, week 1? What's going to happen? Who are our starting tackles?
I'll just tell you that Joe Sheehan and his staff, they've done a hell of a job. Jack Conklin, unfortunately, he's been hurt the last couple of years due to someone throwing their guy into him. I mean, he's handling his business on the right side, and unfortunately, he ends up getting hurt. A guy that busts his ass, works extremely hard during the offseason, and unfortunately, he was, in a bad position.
Right.
If Bill Callahan was there, which he's not, there's no telling what would happen at left tackle. I mean, every guy on that offensive line was schooled so that they could play any position. Now you got a whole new set of guys and a whole new coach. They are learning some things that maybe just a little bit different. And those guys haven't had the opportunity to get some of the reps. I know you have to allow those Joe as well as Jack, Wyatt, those guys some time off from practice. So some of the reps they did not get. That's not a unit. I think whoever they start this year, this week, that's going to have had a whole lot of reps. And the one thing is that those tackles, Miles will be playing. The other tackles in the league, they'll be playing. This is not preseason. So those defensive ends, defensive tackles, whether Miles is inside or on the edge, they're going to have their hands full. And Dallas happened to be bringing a hell of a pass rusher with them this week.
Yeah, that's true. Question from Jason here in the comments, just talking about the preseason. What do you think about not playing your main guys in preseason, meaning the starters? I know he's probably referring to Deshaun Watson, but a good bulk of the starters did not play in that preseason game. Just want to get your thoughts on that. Well,
I think football has changed. The good thing about it, they have those joint practices. Guys, it's not a loving attitude with those joint practices. Every position coach is trying to get his guy to perform his best. It's like a game. I know it was that way with the running backs and the linebackers, and I'm sure Deuce had it going. There's no question in my mind about that. And I know the offensive line, those guys were going. So you get a lot of competition right there, and you try to save yourself from injury. You don't know when it can happen, but football is going that way now. So I don't think it's bad. I definitely would not have played Deshaun in this last game with the guys that you had playing tackle. Now you got to do something. It's real ball now. He's got to play. But you just hope and pray they can stay away from the injuries.
And I think that's what so many people seem to forget, that yes, Deshaun Watson didn't play, and the national media ran with it. Local media ran with it. Everybody had their own story. Deshaun Watson this, Deshaun Watson that. But the core of it was the starting offensive line wasn't out there. You're throwing a huge risk in starting Deshaun Watson, your very expensive quarterback, out there with question marks at protection. Not to sound bad about those players or anything, but if you're going to go out there with your starters, you want to make sure that they're out there as a unit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think those trainers, Joe Sheehan, like I said, in his group, they probably doing a hell of a job of getting those guys ready for game one against Dallas. And Deshaun has thrown a lot of balls. He's, I'm sure, been examined by the doctors, his or the Browns doctors. And I know he's trying to do everything he possibly can, and he want to feel good and ready to go.
Yeah.
Stump, question for you. As this 53-man roster kind of was rolled out, only 2 tight ends, but obviously injuries and stuff like that, and other things. Do you see more of a less tight end type of situation this year, with the Browns only obviously having 2 tight ends and no other ones on the team at this point, and that they're going to go more pass heavy with wide receivers and not as much tight end this year? I'm just curious to your opinion, because in the past with Stefanski's offense, he would want more tight ends on the team. And I'm just curious if that kind of surprised you, only carrying 2 tight ends going into the initial 53-man roster.
Not really. I mean, it seems as if Kevin has moved away from some of what he did as an offensive coordinator and allowed others to have a more impact. Now, the only thing I'll say about that is, and usually, unless you're in a tight set, that tight end was split out. So it doesn't matter if you got receivers, you're still going to have matchups that you can win with, because most teams are not going to have three great corners. I mean, that third guy think he's that great, but when he gets a chance to line up against Amari or somebody, when they put him in a position like that, usually he gets it handed to him. I mean, I think the Browns have a great group of wide receivers, their formation stuff where they can win. So it's not bad to see them with only two tight ends at this particular point in time, because it seems like they're going to do more passing than they are running.
I was a little bit confused for the Browns to terminate the contract of Deontay Foreman. Now, I understand why they would do that right? In terms of why they would do that, maybe with the agreement that they'll bring him back after some roster moves. But, you know, bringing somebody like Deontay Foreman back in, I remember a couple of, or was it last year? Yeah, David mentioned Mo Hurst. You know, they cut him, and then a day or two later, they bring him right back. You know, in terms of those conversations, what is that? You know, if you've ever been part of it, what does that look like? You know, hey, we're going to cut you. Don't take it personally, but we're going to bring you right back here in a few days.
Well, Allie, Dustin, it's all about business. You know, you try to do business. You're rolling the dice. Mo Hurst, I'm the running back. I was the running back coach, and I was sorry to see Mo Hurst go, because I didn't think he was going to clear waivers, but he did. So if you don't have that guy on the roster the first regular season game, his contract is not guaranteed anymore. If he's on the roster the first regular season game, then his entire contract, if he's that type of veteran, is guaranteed. So you're rolling the dice. They feel like they can get away, I think, this first game if no one picks him up, and you know, there you have it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking, to week one, is there anything specifically, obviously you've been in the position. What are you looking for out of the Browns? Or one thing, let me ask you two things. What one thing concerns you, and what second thing are you excited about? For me, I'm excited to see Jerry Jeudy personally, to see what he can do with the Browns. I'm just curious what concern you have, at least for in week one, and what thing are you most excited in week one that you're going to be looking for?
My biggest concern is that offensive line. You just don't know. You got some guys that haven't practiced a whole lot, and now you have pretty much, I think, a different system in, and it's going to be interesting to see what happened. Dallas going to get off the plane, go to the hotel, get on the bus, come to the stadium, and they're going to try to exploit those tackles for the most part. And you're going to have speed coming off the edge. You're going to have blitzes coming up the middle. They're going to try to eliminate the pass game, because they haven't been able to run the ball during the preseason all that well either. So there's a lot that's going on. Unfortunately, also, the Browns have given up a couple big passes. I know they weren't playing their starters in the secondary for the most part, but those are some issues that they know they have to get corrected.
Yeah. My question to you is, go ahead. No, go ahead, Dustin.
And what are you most excited for, Stump?
I'm excited to see Miles and Z-Man, Dalvin. I'm excited to see those guys coming. Oh, they played their butts off last year. I know Coach Schwartz and those other guys, coaches on defense, gonna have them fired up and ready to go. They're playing a home game. They feel that they have to be the ones to win the game. I know they feel that way because they're looking at the offensive injuries that they have. They know they got to come out and they have to start fast. They have to create takeaways, and I think they can do it. Hopefully, I'm not sure, but I'm praying that Denzel will be able to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a scary situation. Just hope for the best for him. Looks like, he's sticking around. So hopefully week one we'll be able to see him out there. I know the concussion protocol is very, very strict. But before we get you out of here, I want to give a shout out to all of your socials. We're excited to have you on. Bring on Stump Talk podcast. You can catch that on YouTube, Instagram, Stump Talk podcast. Can't talk today, apparently. Twitter at Coach Stump Media, TikTok Coach Stump Media, and also on Facebook at Stump Talk Podcast. My question for you, Stump, is what's it like to watch a football game? Not coach, but watch a football game with Stump Mitchell.
Well, you get to actually hear what probably all the other offensive coaches are saying. I comment on some of those things: offensive line play, tight end play, wide receiver play, and of course running back play. So that's what you get to watch.
Yeah,
it's like watching with a teacher. I mean, it's like watching with a teacher of the game. Exactly.
Pretty much.
That's
I mean,
cool.
as a running back, you hear everything, and you have to know everything. So I'm sure Deuce tell those guys the strengths and weaknesses of their opponent, but also the strengths and the weaknesses of everybody that's lining up in front of them, because they're that safety. They have to get a chip when it comes to pass protection. You got to get out in your route, of course, but first things first, you can't allow that defensive end to get on the edge if you got an opportunity to chip him back onto your tackles.
Yeah. Interesting. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I can just picture him, like the commentary from Coach Stump would be you learn a lot, just like we do every time we have you on. Stump Mitchell, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Go Browns.
Go Browns. That is Stump Mitchell. Just a plethora of knowledge every time we get to talk to him. That's a lot of fun. But
he's so cerebral, like in his thought process.
Great.
Like I mean, you could just imagine he's like, okay, I can almost picture it. It would be like, this guy's gonna do this. Watch this. Like he's already watching it, and he's watching the game in slow motion while we're watching it in real time. If that makes sense. I feel like he'd be like, look for this. Here's that tell that because you have to have that kind of, because the NFL has played at such a quick pace. You have to slow it down and kind of almost look at it from a different lens. So yeah, you're right. He would be sitting there going, all right, he better figure it out, kind of stuff. So it'd be fun.
It would be. All right, Dustin, tell our listeners about True Fan Travel.
Guys, if you haven't booked your trip to Las Vegas, it is still not too late. True Fan Travel going to Las Vegas at the end of the month. I'll be out there. You can join the Here We Go Brownies podcast. We'll be doing a lot of cool stuff from Vegas. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. But guess what? If you can't make it to Vegas, there's a lot more trips out there. You can go to Washington, D.C. You can go to New Orleans and watch a great game there. But go to truefantravel.com to book your trip. And the real cool thing about it is, if you don't want to buy the all-inclusive package and you're already planning it, they have packages just for the tailgate, or just the tailgate and a ticket. And you get your own way there. So lots of cool things. They're great people. Got to meet them a couple weeks ago when they were here in Cleveland. Great folks to work with. And they're from Philly. And Allie, you'll really appreciate this. Every time I leave a message for the folks at True Fan Travel, obviously they're out of Philadelphia, and his phone message says "Go Birds." So I finished the message with "Go Browns."
You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, be sure to check them out. Also want to give our friends over at 5 Iron Golf some love. Look, I know and understand golf is a very hard game. It's a lot of fun, but it's hard and it's not for everyone. So if you're maybe a beginner, or it's raining and you need to go practice, or you just want to be inside so you can drink a beer and not sweat, head on over to 5 Iron Golf. They make golf for everyone. It's a dynamic, entertaining, and inclusive way to experience golf. So be sure to go check them out. You can practice, you can play, and of course, it's inside. So I know right now it's super hot out in Ohio. You don't have to sweat. You can go inside,
and
have a beer.
And you can always, if you use the code Brownie40, which is amazing, Brownie40, you get 40% off any hourly rental of golf there. So it doesn't matter anytime, anywhere. Go to their location in downtown Cleveland on Euclid Avenue.
There you go. There you have it. Also, yes, beer and water. You gotta stay hydrated. A sip of this, then you gotta follow with a sip of water. Stay hydrated. All right, I want to get back to the conversation we started with, and that is the quarterback situation. As it stands right here, right now, there are 4 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. And I started by saying I think that's somewhat telling of how the front office feels about Deshaun Watson, whether that's play, injury, what have you. There are some concerns, and there should be concerns on, the longevity of Deshaun Watson. Can he make it the entire season? And I think we were burned so badly last year that in just an abundance of caution, they go out and bring in every quarterback available to them. Essentially, there's 4 active quarterbacks. Because you take a look around the league, I mean, look at almost any other roster. You've got QB1, QB2. That's it. Not QB1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
So I think that it's a valid concern, and the Browns should be concerned. But I think it is somewhat telling that Deshaun Watson's got to go out and perform this year. I mean, have to.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, I believe, do we have him under contract through 2026?
Yeah.
Is that 2026? Is
Uh-huh.
that right?
Yeah.
So,
So basically, next year, if they decided to move off of Deshaun Watson, the dead cap hit, I forget what it is. It's steep. Let me tell you that. It is steep, but I don't want to spew an incorrect number. It would
Right.
be the same whether he's playing or whether he's on the team or whether he's not on the team. So there's a world where if they restructure, it's in an attempt to maybe move on, or if they don't, they're just going to cut the losses and deal with it because it's going to cost the same either way.
Yeah, and so I guess where I was going with that 2026 number is, I don't know if DTR will be a starter in this league. I think at this point he's a great backup, and I think he's going to get better and better with more game experience. Well, he obviously had game experience last year, but I mean, just with more reps, he'll become a great player. But you're right, the Browns are all in on Deshaun Watson, so he really needs to perform at a high level this year and get back to his Houston Texans days. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's why we paid all that money for him, is to have him be that player and have those capabilities. Unfortunately, because of injuries and what happened last year, it looked like he was on that trajectory, especially as the season went on after that Baltimore game. I thought we all sat around and we were like, okay, wow, there's the Deshaun Watson we all thought that we were looking for. And then unfortunately with the injury, just boom, dash, right? So I think injury-free this year, I think we need to have him be 17 games, no injuries. We can't predict injuries in the NFL. That's just, that's an anomaly.
Sure,
It's an outlier. But here's the thing. I don't need Deshaun Watson to be great this year. I need him to be good. You know what I mean? I don't need him to be great. I mean, if he's a good quarterback, we're a playoff team, right? I mean, if he's good, right? He doesn't have to be a superstar. I mean, he just has to be a good quarterback at the end of the day.
How do you feel in the event that we do have to go through the depth chart in terms of the quarterback position? Let's just say week 6, something happens, we got to start somebody else. Are you giving the nod to Jameis, or are you giving it to DTR at this current moment in time?
This could be unpopular. I've never been like a huge Winston fan. I guess I'll just put that out there. I've never been and the reason I say that is he's kind of a pick machine, or has been a pick machine in the past. And I know this about the National Football League. Anytime you put a guy in a game and he plays quarterback for you, and you give your opponent more opportunities, so basically the team that has the more turnovers, 90% of the time, Allie, that team loses the football game. And this, in the National Football League, it's all about possessions and the ones that you have more than your opponent. I feel, and again, this is what I feel like Winston, if had to be put in a football game, would put us maybe more at risk than DTR would be. And I mean, I just mean that from a pure football standpoint, just because of his track record with the interceptions. Here's the thing about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, the one thing about Deshaun Watson, he's pretty smart with the ball and he makes good decisions. And throughout his career, he doesn't throw a lot of picks. So I don't know over the course of multiple games what DTR would look like, but I do have the body of work of Winston to look at. And he's thrown a lot of interceptions in his career. And interceptions will kill you. Just look at the Browns playoff game last year. When Flacco threw those interceptions, it was kind of game over for the Cleveland Browns, unfortunately, in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jameis. I think he's a good veteran to have on your team. I think he's a good leader. He's crazy. Like, he's the stuff that comes out of his mouth. He's nuts. He's nuts. I love the guy. I think he's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that he is a Cleveland Brown. I am. I think that he's a good guy to have on your team. But I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is probably the second best quarterback on this team. I'm very intrigued by him. And I think when you look at last year, prior to his injury in that Denver game, I mean, he was playing just lights out. I think all of us fans were very optimistic that DTR, prior to that injury, could get us pretty far where we wanted to go. Yeah. Obviously, Flacco came in and we were okay to at least make the playoffs. But man, I think that DTR is a good quarterback, and I don't think the Browns are going to shop him. They know what they have in this player. To get him late round last year and be able to play, I mean, Sutton Mitchell said this a few weeks ago, to play in a similar vein of Deshaun Watson. You've got Jameis, who's more like Joe Flacco, more of a pocket guy, and you've got elusiveness with DTR, just like you do with Deshaun Watson. Sure, he's younger, he's less experienced. Like, there's going to be those hiccups, but I mean, the big playability, the boom or bust potential, man, it's a pretty high ceiling for DTR.
Well, and think about it from Andrew Berry's perspective. I mean, we have a lot of money on this team, right? We have a lot of players with some contracts out there. DTR is on a very rookie-friendly deal right now. And if you shopped Winston, that helps your salary cap money, right? So, I mean, that's a big chunk of money that you don't have to, that you could distribute to other people, right? Or restructure some things and do some things that you want to do with your other players, as you try to manipulate the cap. But, DTR on a rookie deal looks pretty friendly right now if you have to move some of these other guys, because at the end of the day, our quarterback's going to be available out there. God forbid we have to get to 5. Well, of course there are. I mean, look, we could just go to the Steelers and get Justin Fields, because clearly he's not going to be starting. Just kidding. I just say that because Russell Wilson was named the starter today. We can go on a tangent about that, but I'm wondering how long that's going to last in Pittsburgh.
Yep. Now, look, so here's the thing, though. I think you could say the two of the pretty bad trades in NFL history so far, were the Russell Wilson situation, that trade. And I mean, you can loop the Deshaun Watson trade into that. Like, obviously it hasn't produced yet. That's still in that conversation. It's not a good trade.
To be determined. To be determined.
Right. That's why I said not yet. We're not there yet. But and then Russell Wilson doesn't work out in Denver. They let go of him. I don't blame Pittsburgh for saying, hey, this is a former MVP, like elite player, elite type of player. Let's see if we can buy low, which is exactly what they did, and just get at least above average performance out of him. Now, do I think they're going to get that? No, I think he's washed. But I do, and it obviously pains me to say this, we hate Pittsburgh, but I would have probably pushed the Browns to do the same thing in a similar situation, right? You buy low with super, super high upside. I mean, like, imagine like next year you don't have a quarterback, but Aaron Rodgers comes available at a very low price. Like, yeah, you're probably going to want to do that. So I do respect it. I just don't think it's going to work out for them.
Yeah, and here's what I don't get, and a lot of the talking heads in the sports world have brought this up. Russell Wilson doesn't seem to be playing like he's fighting for his career. Does that make sense? Like, a lot of people have made the comment.
He should be.
He's not acting like he's fighting for his career, and he should be having that mentality, which I would have that mentality if I was at a place and they were really and ready to cut their losses and take a huge cap hit just to get you out of here. To me, that would be the biggest wake-up call, that if another team gave me an opportunity, I would make the most of that opportunity and prove to them why I should be the starter, not only for that year, but into the foreseeable future, right? Like, I mean, I don't know.
Well, Dustin, not only that, a team that is taking a shot on me to save my career, but also I really want to make sure that I'm the guy, because they also trade for a young, former, first round pick. You're going to want to be, I mean, there's some pressure there. Now, I know that Justin Fields hasn't been who we all thought he was going to be when he was drafted, but nonetheless, he's still a former first round pick with super high upside in the right situation. I mean, he thrives in some situations, but yeah, if I'm Russ, I'm wanting to, making sure I'm doing what I need to do.
Well, I don't ever want to question somebody's what's the word I'm looking for? Competitiveness, right, to play football. But I don't feel like I'm seeing that from Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? That high intensity, like I want to go out and win this starting job and run through a brick wall. You know what I can tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, good or bad, Baker Mayfield did that, right? I'm going to run through a brick wall just so I can keep my job. I don't know. I kind of want a guy like that, right? That's going to have that mentality as a quarterback. Now, that's the one thing I can say about Deshaun Watson. I mean, he went 14 of 14 in a football game where he's literally injured to a point of an injury that we find out later could risk him not being able to throw anymore.
He's got a broken arm. He's got a broken bone.
Right. And he's out there going 14 of 14. I can root for a guy like that, right? But I don't want a guy that's just kind of going through the motions and is like, nah, I don't know, right? It makes you hard to root for a guy like that.
Definitely.
Me, you know? So
I wouldn't be thrilled about that either. Before we wrap up, Dustin, tell our listeners about Western Reserve Distillers.
Guys, we have been here all night at Western Reserve Distillers. Allie, they had a class tonight. I was a little jealous. I kind of wanted to get in there. They were making cocktails and mixtures, and they had fresh fruit and making. I mean, you and David would have had a field day here because you would have been.
Yeah, that sounds like our kind of thing.
That's your jam, exactly. So
it
was great.
Yeah.
We had some people out here with some classes. We had some people stop by. They got some Stadium Mustard, and they got some Stadium Mustard T-shirts. So that was the gals that you saw here that stopped by. But guys, if you're here, come here every Wednesday night. Even if we are not here, it is whiskey, wine, and wings every Wednesday. 50-cent wings, half bottles of wine, half off, Allie, half off a bottle of wine. That's a great deal. And by the way, you can get your Here We Go Brownies flight of whiskeys. That's right. This includes the 20-year, the sherry, and the other ones here. And you can add an extra one. That's $3 for each of those. That is an amazing deal to come here and sample our pre-release, pre-season, by the way. They said people are really enjoying those and coming in and getting the bottles. I know, Allie, you and David have them, and you're enjoying the whiskeys now as well. But guys, come into Western Reserve. It's right here in downtown Lakewood, Ohio. Great part of the west side of Cleveland. But come over here, check it out. Their food's amazing. It's a cool spot to hang out and just have a fun night. They got a patio. Just a fun place to hang out and do fun stuff. By the way, we got some cool stuff to mention next month that we'll be doing here, but that is too. We can't tell you all those things.
Yeah, you just gotta stay tuned.
Some surprises.
Yeah, we do. All right, Dustin, any closing thoughts as we wrap up on a beautiful Wednesday evening?
Yes, Allie, this will be the longest 10 days of our life.
Yeah, it will.
Seem like till she's like, yes, it will. Till one football season. College football will keep us content for the first week. But Allie, I hope you have an amazing time at your bachelorette party, not your bachelor party, but your bachelorette party with all your. I'm assuming your sister is coming down and the whole fam and doing the thing.
I've got my mom, my sister, my godmother's coming down, and my friend Kelly, who's in the wedding, will be here. So it'll be us, myself, David will be here, and I'm really excited. He's sticking around. He's going to be our bartender, DD. I'm excited about that. So I'm happy to host my own bachelorette party. I'm really excited about that. I live in a really cool place where we're just a couple hours away from some cool places. We're an hour away from Dustin, a couple hours away from New Orleans. So we're in a good spot. So I don't know what they have planned yet, but I am excited. So I've got to stay hydrated because I know what's going to happen this weekend.
Tell your sister it's still out there if she wants to go into Columbus and get some free city barbecue and post about it and tag the Here We Go Brownies. You just let me know and we'll get her some barbecue that she can go enjoy with. Is her boyfriend or is it her fiance? Is this her boyfriend?
Yeah, her boyfriend. Yeah, her boyfriend. Yeah. They're in Columbus, so
nice.
Yeah, there you go. There you have it. All right, cool.
That's all I got, Alan. That's it.
That's all I got. I got nothing. I'm excited for football. That's it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.